Fahmi Bahardin. I work at UFCO as the outreach coordinator. I am moderator for today's panel, which is Overcoming Stigma and Health Disparities. I think we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it. The first speaker that we have is Alan Lee. Alan Lee is a primary care physician at Regent Park Community Health Center, community activist, and community-based researcher. Alan has co-founded the Asian Community AIDS Services and the Ethno-Racial Treatment Support Network and the Committee for Accessible AIDS Treatment. Alan is currently the recipient of the Policy and Practice Leader Award at the Ontario HIV Treatment Network. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you very much for having me here. It's exciting to have a forum that focused on gay men's health. And this is one of the projects that I've been involved with through the Asian Community AIDS Services. Can I get a bigger version of this? It's called the MSM Resilience Dialogues. It's actually, the pilot experience is kind of like our virgin voyage of how to test drive this intervention. So we'll start with, okay, great, thank you. So maybe just a little bit of history, how it came about. In 2013, I think actually was the last time I was here with Christian Hui, who coordinated this project. We had a developmental research called the Asian MSM's Pathways to Resiliency Project, AMP2R for short, which is a developmental project funded by CIHR Catalyst Grant that enabled us to engage about 50-some gay Asian men to look at the key issues that impact their sexual health through different life transition experiences. And then through that experiences, we've also had focus groups of service providers who work with Asian MSM. And through that research, we were able to identify some common challenges and cross-cutting resilience strategies across different life issues. So the key issues that people identify that are most impactful on their sexual health and actually on their health in general are coming out, migration, first relationship and sexual experiences, and HIV. And then through all those, we also were able to pilot some experiential exercise and activities that we found to be effective in promote reflective learning. And at the end of that, we conducted a number of knowledge translation exchange sessions with the community to look at what they want to do with the findings. And through that, very much similar to what our keynote speaker talked about this morning, we were able to identify some key domains for skill development and intervention. So that's how, so one of the exercises we did in the developmental research is to actually is a graphic storytelling narrative for people to focus on one critical life event and identify facilitating factors, challenges and barriers, and how they navigate through those in a real life situation to reach their life goals. So after we did the research, we also review existing literature and models available on promoting resilience. Opposed to the kind of problematized, pathological kind of focus promotion, we actually try to sell the project, market the project with a more resilience promotion lens. So you don't have to be an addict, you don't have to be concealing yourself, you don't have to suffer from depression to be able to access the intervention. And we felt that because the whole premise of that is a strength-based kind of intervention. So we also learned from other local research and intervention experiences in our communities. Two of the other projects that I was involved in, one is one is CIHR-funded intervention research called CHAMP, which is a community HIV advocate mobilization project for Black, Asian, and Latino communities. And that project looks to improve psychoflexibility and social justice capacity building skills through a number of interventions. And the Legacy project is another project in the immigrant refugee communities that, in immigrant refugee people with HIV community, that look at building intergenerational connections, learning, and communities. So through those and the experiences at ACAS, we began to articulate and formulate our own intervention that focus on building resilience. So the key conceptual framework and the activities that made up our intervention consist of the mindfulness, focusing on psychological flexibility, social justice awareness, capacity building, greater involvement and meaningful involvement of people living with HIV/AIDS, and the principle of collective empowerment. So our kind of concept of resilience really is an interconnected model that starts from self, building onto interpersonal, organizational, and societal, that encompasses different aspects of that. Our intervention is a 4 half-day sessions with introductory sessions before that allowed us to do some of the background information, get informed consent, get people to fill out the pre-intervention assessment tools. And also after the intervention, we had a 3-month follow-up session. The first 2 sessions really focus on building individual level resilience. So that includes activities that enable people to explore their identities, like multi-dimensions of their identities, their own experiences with resisting challenges, their resilience responses, and the resources they've accessed, and trying to get people to, through reflection and peer-shared learning, to look at how they can adapt different skills across different life challenges. So for example, a lot of people who are new immigrants to the country actually brought a lot of skills, and they have adapted through the migration process with a lot of pride and with a lot of awareness of how they successfully navigate that. But a lot of times we weren't able to apply those same skills in, say, coming out to our families, right? So it's about learning what are the common elements in some of those experiences and how we can transfer some of those skills and apply into different kind of life challenges. The second 2 sessions focus on building community resilience. So it includes activities that engage participants to explore community history, explore the impact and experiences in accessing community resources, and the legacy of activism and community building. And then people also get connected to other community leaders and intergenerational connections through mentorship and through their research kind of activity as part of their homework, and engage in building creative projects together. So it's a group process, it's a group intervention, and then after we finished the AMP2R project and started this project, we were hoping to get CIHR funding to actually do the intervention, but we weren't successful in getting that. So thankfully, with the commitment of Asian Community AIDS Services, we were able to run a pilot to get more experiences and to actually help us to learn how to fine-tune that to apply it in real life. So the objectives of our pilot was to gain experiences of the intervention, to inform us about the feasibility for implementation in the future, to pilot research instruments, to look at their responses, their reliability, and to refine them, and to also get experiences on the intervention activities itself to look at their effectiveness, their outcome, and how we can refine them. And also to increase community engagement and preparedness and interest, right, in co-developing and implementing the project. So we have 11 people engaged in the pilot, and including 6 people from ACAS Men's Program, which basically is targeting adult MSM, 3 people from the support program, which serve as Asian living with HIV/AIDS, 1 from the youth program, and 1 from the Committee for Accessible AIDS Treatment, who's a partner in this project. So what did we try to learn and evaluate from that? So we wanted to evaluate our research instrument, the pre- and post-test intervention questionnaire, to look at how appropriate those scales are, how reliable they are, and what kind of outcome actually observed from the participants. We want to look at our intervention design and the actual activities, how people experience them, how it's structured, whether it actually are effective in achieving the stated objectives that they aspire to achieve. We want to also look at people's experiences with the format, the timing of the day, the venue, the logistics of carrying out the interventions, see how appropriate it is for our communities. And then we engage people to look at suggestions for improvement and change. So people were engaged in completing a pre- and post-intervention questionnaire, and also engaged in a post-intervention debriefing session, mostly to talk about the immediate reflection and experience with the activities, and also critique the questionnaire and logistic issues. Then we send people an online anonymous survey for them to complete, and that asks very detailed questions about each of the activities on the agenda, the perception of the training effectiveness in achieving its goals, the structure, timing, processes of the intervention, and suggestions for specific changes. And then 3 months later, actually in actual fact, we did it like 4 months later, we had invite the people back to a post-intervention focus group for them to reflect on, what they still remember from the training, whether they have been able to use any of those skills learned in their real life, and whether people have stayed connected and engaged as a community, and whether any of them are interested in becoming future peer leaders to help us roll out the intervention. So in terms of the pre- and post-intervention questionnaire, we've actually used 11 standardized validated scales to measure different dimensions of the kind of skills that we want to build. So that includes psychological flexibility, individual resilience, post-traumatic growth resilience measure, self-help advocacy, safer sex advocacy, anti-oppression readiness, community resilience, social connection, community engagement, HIV risk behavior, and mental wellness. And so participants found that the post-traumatic growth one really hard to understand. And they also found the community engagement is kind of confusing because they don't know whether they refer to them the gay community or the Asian community or the gay Asian community or their religious community or what, right? So it needs to be specified. And then people find the short HIV risk behavior scale, which is the high-risk scale that a lot of people use for like PrEP and all that kind of research, is the people with HIV in the group find it really stigmatizing because basically it asks how many positive partners you have and how many and safe sex you've had, and your score basically is how high your risks are, right? And then we found that most of them actually have internal consistency and reliability, so the alpha is greater than 0.7, except the two scale, the first one and the fifth one. But interestingly, the participants' result also shows that all their means, pre and post intervention means actually improve in all the scales except 1 and 5, and also mental wellness. But the changes are too small to be statistically significant. But we didn't really, that wasn't like the huge focus of the pilot anyway. But it's interesting to find that. So the other area that we evaluated is the intervention design. Half of the people find that it's about right length of engagement. 25% people find the 4 half-day is too short. 30% find them is too long. Timing, people prefer weekend half-day, then weekend full day, or weekend overnight, but I don't think we can afford to pay for a retreat. Otherwise, everybody would be very happy. weeknight evenings, which actually is the majority of how we conducted the sessions, we find it to be somewhat least preferred because people were kind of exhausted at the end of a work day and don't have the full mental energy to participate. We asked people how they felt about the overall effectiveness of the activity and achieving the overall learning objectives. And so it's from a scale of 1 to 5, so anything over 4 is really very good. Over 3.75, I would say, is pretty good. So we wanted to raise people's awareness of their own self-resilience. We wanted to raise awareness of people's awareness on the contributing factors to their resilience, enable development of skills in accessing their cultural strength and awareness of challenges related to their cultural identity, and looking at cultural connections, transferable strategies, and building a sense of community. So you can see that in most dimensions, people find it quite effective. And then people also find that in terms of the format of the activities, people find that they mostly like to share in pairs or small groups. Most of our activities are very interactive. There are some that people have to do some self-reflection first before sharing, so people tend to have a little more hesitation with that. Last couple of slides. So suggestion for changes. So people actually felt that they wanted more time to build trust and to do sharing in more in-depth. And they actually want the facilitators to have more self-disclosure because we were kind of struggling to want people to experience the full range of the activities, and we're trying to cognizant not to make it about ourselves, but want to honor the time for the other people, but then it kind of creates a little bit of distance between the facilitators and the participants. So people think that, we need more debriefing time for each of the activities rather than more activities. We wanted to have exercise that address stigmatized issue early in the training. One of the activity which I'll be running as a workshop tomorrow morning, if you can come at 9 o'clock, is the exclusion circle, which is an activity that we've developed for another research that specifically deal with stigma within the HIV and MSM communities. So people thought that if we do that sooner rather than later, it would have enabled more in-depth sharing earlier in that process. People kind of felt that they just started to warm up and kind of open their hearts, but it's getting to the end of the intervention. People also find that sometimes it's hard for them to disclose some of those issues. Actually, the people with HIV find it really hard to disclose, even though some of them know each other. So one of the suggestions is for people to actually table some of the difficult issues anonymously, and then for us to inject that into the group work activities without necessarily forcing people to self-disclose. So overall, I think the pilot was very valuable and giving us an experience to understand how some of the research interventions that we develop can get implemented in real life. And we were very thankful for the research team, for the participants, for our community advisory committee to enrich our experience. And I think that we had a very exciting intervention that actually had a lot of potential to be able to foster resilience in our community. And I hope to be able to share more with you once we get resources to roll it out in full scale. Thank you.